Hi, this is your application specialist, Dean Eldridge at FREY Municipal Software. Today, I will be demonstrating the new features, improvements, and refinements of the 2024 release of CHIPS. This will be a great opportunity to explore and learn how to gain additional value from your CHIPS payroll system. Please refer to the CHIPS release letter for information concerning these enhancements. If you are following along with the release letter, please mark any items that you have further questions on and contact support at 800-659-3739 or email us at support@freymunicipalsoftware.com. Let's begin by logging into CHIPS and reviewing the exciting new enhancements to the CHIPS 2024 release. When logging into CHIPS after the release has been installed, each user will be prompted to read the current release letter. This will contain information about all the enhancements, including the ones we'll be discussing today. Click Yes to view the release letter, or No not to view the release letter. Or you can check this box and this message won't appear again. Next, a Stay Connected message will display. Once this information is filled out, this message won't appear again for this user. Be certain to fill this screen out. The release letter is always accessible from the Help Release Letter menu option. Now let's jump into the enhancements with the CHIPS 24 release. First, an option has been added to the system controls to require the employee's gender. This option would specifically be beneficial for users that utilize a state retirement reporting system that requires a gender to be reported in the file. To enable this option, go to General and down to System Controls, selecting Edit. On the Controls tab, down on the bottom right side, there's a checkbox or Require Gender. When this checkbox is checked, anytime an employee is added or edited, CHIPS will require a gender to be designated on the employee screen. Next, deduction earning codes now accommodate code II for Box 12. This is used for Medicaid waiver payments excluded from gross income under Notice 2014-7. Within deduction earning codes, this W2 box code field now will accept the II code as well. Time payroll has had several enhancements. The first will be on the time payroll processing screen. A department range is now available at the bottom of the screen to filter which departments are included or displayed on this screen. This isn't applicable to when we're adding time payroll transactions, but what's displayed when we're on this screen. Next, an option has been added to system controls related to adding comp hours during time payroll. When entering comp hours added, we have added the ability to have a factor assigned to the field utilized to calculate the number of hours to add. This factor is set up in the system controls on the Controls tab. So we'll go to General and down to System Controls and Edit. And then when we select the Controls tab, down at the bottom right, there's a comp hours added factor. When you first install, this will have a 1 in it. And if we wanted something other than a 1 in there for a factor for the calculation, we would enter it here. So for example, if 1.5 were set up as a factor, then during time payroll processing, if 4 hours were added, 6 would actually be added, 1.5 times the 4. So let's close out of the system controls for an example of how that would work. So when we go to time payroll processing, and we add a time payroll transaction for an employee, remember I set up that factor for mine as 1.5. So down in the section of the time payroll screen where we add comp hours, there's now an entered field and then an added field. The entered field is where we'll type in the hours. So if it's 4 hours, when I enter 4, it's going to calculate 1.5 times and have comp hours added as 6. Both entered and added value will be displayed in the employee's history. The off-time balances that are displayed and updated will be based on the calculated or the added field. Next, an option has been added to the system controls. So General, System Controls, Edit on the Preferences tab. That will allow for the Generate Standard Payroll option to occur even if a time payroll transaction already exists. By default, a standard payroll can only be generated if no payroll transactions exist. So this option is on the Preferences screen. Allow Generate Standard Payroll when other time transactions exist. So I'll leave that unchecked for my example. So if we come into time payroll processing, and let's say we already have a transaction entered for this employee. So I have one payroll transaction. You'll notice the Generate Standard Payroll is disabled. If we now go into the system controls and enable that option, so that's on the Preferences tab. Over here in this section, allow Generate Standard Payroll when other time payroll transactions exist. I'll save that setting. Now when we go back into time payroll, I can now generate a standard payroll for all of the other employees in addition to the one that's already in there. So now I can generate the standard payroll, and transactions will now be added for everyone else through the Generate Standard Payroll process. The next option or enhancement is related to the Generate Standard Payroll, but the one that's off the menu. So if we go to Payroll, into Time Payroll, there's a Generate Standard Payroll option in here. This option now has a department range on it. What this would mean is if I come in here and generate a standard payroll, and maybe I only want to do that for a specific department, I could put in my pay period ending date and then come down here and tell it Department 100. And when I click OK, that would generate a standard payroll just for employees within Department 100, meaning no other employees would be generated through this process. The next enhancement we'll talk about will be related to the printing of checks and direct deposits. There have been several enhancements related to these. This check stub will now print in mixed case, not just upper. In order to best utilize this, several areas are now enabled for user-defined entry of descriptions, which would allow for mixed case. And we'll go through several of these. The first would be the tax codes and tables area. Within tax codes and tables, this will specifically be related to state, city, county, local, and school taxes. On each one of these, so I will edit this city tax, there is a check description field. This is a field that you as a user can type into. So I could type that in using mixed case. If I wanted to type in something more specific for what city it is or something, this field allows me to type not only uppercase but lowercase as well, which would be then utilized on the check stub for mixed case printing. That will be on both city, state, and all the other local taxes. So if I come down to estate tax, there's 2 on here. There's a state tax description here, and then underneath of it, there's one for the other state tax. So I could do something like that. The next area that utilizes mixed case now are within the deduction earning codes. So if we go to General, down to Deduction Earning Codes, each one of these will have a field that says check description. This check description is now also a mixed case description. So on this particular one, I could type bonus and use upper and lowercase. That would be applicable to all deductions and earnings. So both of those areas would be items that after you install the CHIPS 24 update that you would want to go into and change with the tax codes and tables and also the deduction earning codes to utilize mixed case. Additionally, the individual message and global check message both allow for mixed case entry. The individual check message would be on the time payroll transaction screen, so this accepts mixed case now. And then also, when we print checks or print direct deposits, this global check message at the bottom, that also accepts mixed case. The result of this change would be on any checks or direct deposit stubs going forward. So this is an example of the prior to CHIPS 2024 release with uppercase for all of the pay types, the deductions, and so on. And then after I've changed within the tax codes and tables, so the state tax descriptions, I've also changed the deduction codes to be mixed case. So that was the part that I went through earlier. We'll just see that instead of being all uppercase, the check stub and direct deposit stubs going forward would give a cleaner mixed case look. An additional new option has been added to the system controls. So let's go back to General, System Controls, into Edit. We'll go back to the Controls tab, and this will be in the Check Preferences area. So this part right here. This new option is a checkbox to print all pay rates on check. By default, after the conversion, this will be off. By checking this box, an hourly rate section will appear on the check stub showing all hourly rates that are applicable for that employee. So we'll turn that on and we'll go back to that example we were on a moment ago for the check. And what we'll see is this hourly rate section. This is new because of me checking that box. Previously, you could have had the regular rate and overtime rate listed at the top of the pay stub. However, with that checkbox, this would list all of the hourly rates for any rates that this employee is paid. Next, some additional date validation will now occur. First, there'll be what's called a check date validation. When we print checks, if the check date that's used up here is more than 7 days into the future, then a verification screen will appear that tells us the check date is more than 7 days in the future. Do we wish to continue? That's intended to help catch where maybe we've entered an incorrect check date more than 7 days in the future. The same sort of option will also be Or the same sort of warning validation will be when we print direct deposits. If a direct deposit date is entered for more than 7 days into the future, that message box will appear as well. Additionally, if a direct deposit is entered that is less than or equal to the current date, it will also display a message. So if I enter 12, something in a date in the past, it's going to bring up a message that says the date is not greater than the current date. And this will also appear if I enter something for today's date. And my sample is on December 17th. So December 17th is the current date. The reasoning for that is the direct deposit is also going to create a file, and that file generally would need a date greater than today. Potentially you could send one with today's date as well. We're just giving you a verification, just a warning to verify that that is what you intend for it to be. A new payroll journal is now available within the payroll menu. This journal is in essence a reprint of the consolidated check register that's used during the calculate payroll process with a few modifications. So if we go to payroll, down to payroll journal, this is going to prompt for a date range, pay period date, check date range, as well as a number of other ranges that could be utilized. Preferences are available to be set up for this report as well. And this report is going to look like the consolidated payroll register that's run when we calculate payroll. Next, within the check reconciliation, there's now an option to include a comment on any transaction. So if we go to payroll and down to check reconciliation and checks, previously a comment was only available when voiding a check or direct deposit. So when we click voided, it would have a comment field. The enhancement is any transaction can now have a comment. So if I right click and on this outstanding check, I can click comment, type in a comment concerning this check, and to the left of the amount field will be an image indicating there is a comment associated with that. So that's to tell me that there's a comment attached to that. And then anytime I come in here, I can right click, look at the comment. The check reconciliation report now has an option to include the employee's mailing address lines on the reports. This too can have preferences set up for it as well. So if we go to the check report, that is this print employee mailing address lines on the report. The printing of the employee residential address was added in previous releases. On the deduction report, there's now an option to include the vendor information that is used for the withholding invoices. So let's go to reports, deduction reports, and the deduction report. When this option is selected, so down here on the right, the print withholding vendor information checkbox, when this is selected, the default vendor setup on the deduction earning code will be displayed. Preferences can be set up for this as well, and this option can also be used within the report scheduler. So I'll select a deduction and a date range. And once I've selected that box there, what that's going to do is on the top line or the heading line for this deduction, it's going to include the vendor, number, and name that this deduction is for. Next, we'll talk about the GL distribution report. So if we go to payroll and down to the GL distribution report, this report now is going to include account total credits and account total debits when it's run in detail. So I'll run this report for an example. So I've selected detail, and at the end of each account level, so this is this account, and I selected to print the detail, so that's what all that is. Now at the bottom, there'll be a total credits line and a total debits line. And there'll also be the net balance. So the net account total is what it used to just print by itself. So these two lines here are the additional ones that were added to the report. The hours distribution report, so we'll go to payroll, down to the hours distribution report, now includes a department range. So what this allows us to do, if we were to run the hours distribution report for a specific date range, we could also tell it to just run for a particular department. And what that would do is only include employees within that department range. The history report, which is reports history report, now includes an option to base the report on the class that would have been used at the time the payroll was run. The history file value will begin populating for payrolls completed after the CHIPS 2024 version has been installed. So to run this for payrolls prior to the 2024, there won't be a history class within that history file, as CHIPS didn't know what it was at that point in time. So once this is installed, then each time we update payroll, the class will also be updated within the history file as it was at that particular time. The employee file option will use what's currently assigned, the class currently assigned on the employee. So class meaning full-time, part-time, and so on. Whereas the new option will look at the history file. So if we run the history file for payrolls processed prior, there is no class assigned, so it won't show anything. In those cases, we would continue to use the employee file, which is what it does prior to the 2024 release. Once 2024 release is installed, the class will then be associated with the history file or updated within the history file. A new workers' comp pay report is now available. That report is located in the Reports menu, Workers' Comp Pay Report. This report will show the detailed employee history information necessary for reporting to workers' comp. It will include the employee number, the name, class, job title, all pay excluding overtime, total pay, hourly rate, Social Security, and Medicare amounts. Preferences can also be set up for this, and for users that have the data dictionary module, it can be sent to Excel. So if we run this report, send it to Excel, it will list the detail of each employee and all of those different fields. The withholding invoice archive now has an option to print the records located in it. So for users that utilize withholding invoices, every time we run a withholding invoice, it creates an archive, which is then located in File Utilities Withholding Invoice Archive. The new option is this print option in the bottom left-hand corner. When we select that print option, we'll have options to select based on date range, vendor, and initials. The results will be similar to the when folding invoice report, and for users with the data dictionary module, this can also be sent to Excel. Next, the report menus option has changed to include a sub-report for all of the hours reports. So all of the hours reports are now within this sub-menu within the main reports menu option. Next, the preferences now have two separate options when choosing to restore the preferences. So if we go to preferences, down at the bottom now, there's not only a restore all defaults, but there's also an option to restore what's called the grid defaults. The grid defaults are used for the collapsing and expanding of the grid sizes when we go into a screen that has grids, like with an employee maintenance or something like that. So if we restore the grid defaults, that restores those. The final enhancement involves the icons in the task pane. These have been updated along with the fonts for the favorites, quick links, and status bar to offer a more modern appearance. This will conclude the CHIPS 2024 release overview. We at FREY Municipal Software would like to thank everyone who responded to our CHIPS survey, as well as all of those who participated in our beta testing. The ideas and suggestions submitted by our customers are the driving force for changes made to the software. I hope this video was helpful. Please let us at support know of any questions. Thank you.